Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to The Culture Hack. I am super excited. We have Steve Bartok on the show today. He is the principal and architect at Keystone Architecture. And welcome to the show, Steve. So glad you could make it.
Hey, Adam. Thanks for having me.
I was pretty excited. I ran into Steve at the Stampede, and turns out we used to train Muay Thai together back in the day. So, small world.
That's right. I didn't remember. You must have knocked me out at some point. So.
I know, right? A few shots to the head, and we're like,
fell out.
That's awesome. Well, first things first, Steve, tell us a little bit about Keystone Architecture.
Sure. Yeah, we're architecture firm that started in Abbotsford about 35 years ago and branched out to Alberta, specifically Calgary, about 3.5 years ago. That does architecture, planning, interior design, and landscape as well. We're sort of a service-based firm, I would describe ourselves. So it's really important for us to collaborate with our clients, understand their needs, and then understand kind of the cities we're in and the context, and work with planners and builders and kind of get a collaborative approach with all sort of everybody who has their finger in the pie of a project is kind of how we sort of frame ourselves, I guess.
Okay, I love it. So doing some cool stuff in the architecture space in Abbotsford and Calgary and all that.
Yeah, kind of all over the Lower Mainland in BC. We kind of work throughout BC and then around the Calgary area, mostly doing like primarily mixed-use multifamily projects, industrial projects, a lot of faith-based projects as well. So pretty diverse base actually, because of being a smaller group that sort of started like back in the sort of late 80s, that just kind of grew and kept growing, and then figured Alberta. I'm from there originally, so I'm from Calgary, as when we used to probably train at some point together. Then came out here about 20 years ago, and then kind of, I guess, went back home in an indirect route.
Okay. All right. Very cool. And you were telling me a lot how your team has a lot of fun. You guys do a lot of great work, but you also have a lot of fun together. So first thing, tell me about team engagement. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think the big one for us is mentorship. That's what we learned a lot with the whole COVID experience we experienced and are probably still somewhat experiencing. Is mentorship is a big part of what all of us do in any job. Your job, my job, is the ability to grow and encourage people. It kind of translates to encourage, develop new skills, and understand the idea of what we call here, a term we probably borrowed from somewhere, but genius spaces, right? All of us are really great at certain things and we're not good at other things. And so we really try to encourage people to grow in any area they want, but also look at those genius spaces. Generally, people like those kind of spaces, and really grow upon that and help grow us as a company and you and staff members, and how we can contribute that to that as a organization is pretty important to us. So we really have an open door policy and really encourage people to not just say that we have an open door policy, but take criticism when we make decisions and go, okay, well, we didn't think of that perspective, right? Or we never thought about it like that. And okay, well, we can sort of take a different look at a policy per se, right? Because I think you and me talked about good ideas run companies, not policies, and policies should be adjusted to the good idea and to smart people who understand something, that perspective maybe that you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tricky. Sometimes we make a policy to address the 10 or 20% that abuse it versus, everyone else that functions quite well under the other way of thinking, right?
Yeah, it's the idea of, you make sort of policies for the 1 or 2% of these holes that you have in your game, in quotations, right? And then don't realize that 2% rule you made actually affects 40% of what you do in a negative way, and you didn't really think about it like that. You're like, well, it was supposed to be a net positive, but actually it's a net negative. So now you got to backpedal. And I think for us, sometimes it's okay to backpedal and say, like, we all make mistakes, and that's okay, right? Management, partners in firms, owners, they make mistakes and they have to learn as well. And sometimes you just got to suck it up and say, okay, maybe that wasn't the right decision, and let's
Right?
figure out where we go forward from here.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, and we've touched on this already, but are there any challenges or things you've had to work through as a team? You guys have been around a while that come to mind. Any stories you want to share that might be beneficial for people out there?
Sure. I think for us, the COVID experience taught us a lot. I'm sure it taught a lot to everybody about communication, but for us specifically, we opened the Calgary office. Like, I was on the last flight as we signed our lease agreement out of Calgary when the airport shut down. So
Right.
Our Calgary office, the whole staff was working from home for almost 2.5 years. So can you imagine? I think we're at 17 people there. So I think 12 or 13 people had never been in the same space, had never really met each other, had never really spent a lot of time with any of the Abbotsford staff. So
Right.
The challenge for that is consistency, communication, and, like I was saying, collaboration and mentorship. So the idea was to sort of translate what we do here, what makes us successful here about this sort of service-based, egos at the door, try to work with people and advise people, like clients in terms of people, and bring that to a group that has never been in that sort of environment was a very daunting, challenging, I would say, ordeal, but we learned a great deal about our industry, but also ourselves, right? The idea of that, sure, you see quite a bit of everyone thinks they communicate well until you communicate.
Right? Yeah,
Wow, what I
exactly.
said, that's not what I said at all, but that's what you interpreted. So what you interpreted is actually correct. I can think I said something, but that's not what the outcome was. So that taught us a lot of how to get consistency, how to get a group up to speed. Like we were saying, policies, like you need a bunch of policies as a baseline for people to understand where the start and finish is, and in between we can make adjustments. So I think that was probably our hardest challenge, and we came through it. But our Abbotsford group having to go home at the same time really helped our Abbotsford group really understand that, because they were at home at the same time. So it wasn't just the Calgary group, it was everybody was at home. So everybody had to really understand how to collaborate and communicate more clearly throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I really liked the notion. I talked to a lot of people, during the pandemic and coming out of it, and about well, how did you adjust the way you did this and did that and the other thing? And the answer is, well, we didn't really change it. It's just the weak spots became much more apparent, right? Because the water cooler conversations didn't fill in the gaps. So all of a sudden, it was obvious, right?
Yeah, it's like those communication moments where you're like, that conversation, we could have clarified this thing in a 30-second conversation at each other's desk, but it took us 2.5 days to first realize there was a problem, right? Like it's just this, you're not in the space, so it's a way harder way to communicate and collaborate. Like there's ways around it, but yeah, it was definitely a challenging process.
Very interesting. So as we look to the future, we've got your Calgary office is growing, Abbotsford's getting bigger, the virtual communication and connection, we learned a lot there. But, how do you see the future of collaboration going for your team with new tools like, AI and the metaverse kind of around the corner? Like, do you have any predictions or plans to keep that engagement going?
Well, that's the big one right there for us. It's trying to encourage engagement of new technologies, to not be terrified of them, right? The world changes, and a lot of these technologies allow us to have different perspectives, right? So, and that goes back to the idea of encouragement, right? Encourage people to grow, to explore, to kind of go under different directions. And, with all of our different educations and background and understanding of what we do in our industry or outside of our industry, that's going to allow us to probably utilize and understand new technologies in different ways, right? It's the old idea of somebody designed something for certain people to use in a specific way, and they use it totally different in totally unexpected ways. And just to encourage that that's okay. We learn a lot from making mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, right? You just got to learn from it. So I think that's a big one. It's just encouragement, understanding that technologies will change. Like everyone's terrified of AI, but I think it's going to benefit us in a whole bunch of other ways we just don't foresee yet. So let's find out what those are.
Cool. I love it. So let's just kind of test the waters, wait and find out, and encourage, that willingness to try things and fail and keep going, right? So, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Steve, for taking the time to chat with me today. Sounds like you guys have done some great things and continue to do great things, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot, Adam, for having me. It's good to bump into you.
Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.